Hello, everybody. At least hopefully someone will, as ever, confirm that you can see and hear me. Welcome to Beyond the Kit. There I see Reaper Miniatures, who I assume is being operated by John, Zachariah M, Ro GR, and Quindy. So if I see you, hopefully that means you see me. And I took a look at the calendar, I guess last night or something, and I'm one of these people who's not great at time, let's say, and I noticed that the next Monday is actual Christmas, and then the Monday after that is, of course, New Year. So I'm guessing that this will be my last show for the year, unless Quindy really feels like coming in and operating the controls on New Year's Day or something, which I'm guessing she won't. But, so it was definitely also my last show before Christmas, and I had this one thing that I wanted to do. So I ran around doing some tests this morning, and we're gonna try and do the thing, which is different. It is going to be a different thing. I don't know if it's going to count as a New Year's show. I don't know what makes a show a New Year's. I am going to try something I've never done before. That's new. Quindy is not dedicated enough to come in. She's confirming that for us. So I'm going to switch over to the other view, but we might be looking at my phone again for a minute, so I'm not necessarily going to put on the light. Well, actually, I'll put on the light just for a minute. So this is what I painted last week. This is the donkey from Reaper. It's also available in a pack version where he's all laden up for your adventurers. I painted the one that's on the website, the not pack version, some years ago. And I had used it in a blog post and mentioned to someone that, if I was painting this now, I think I would approach it very differently than I did then. And I said, well, that would be interesting to see. So I got a copy of this guy, and last week I finally worked on that. So my aim was to paint it in a way that was less stressful on me, I guess, and a little quicker, but also to look a little more naturalistic. So like there's some kind of color variation. I think I need to go in after having him sat on my shelf since the show. I think I need to bump the highlights up just a little. Although he is a decent sized miniature, it's still a miniature. We still need the contrast to, figure out the shapes and forms. So I did some decent shading on it, I think, but I think just a little more highlighting for him. And for a size comparison, well, here I have handy our old friend. But we can also look at some other miniatures before I switch over to painting. So, this guy was the miniature of the month. I'm going to say October. Making it up. I don't know. And he is somebody, Skarnak Hobgoblin, Car or something, Skarnak Hobgoblin. So I painted him, but he turned out to have some friends. And it took me roughly 1,000 years, but I did paint them up eventually. And I guess the good news is that Ron is very happy about that. But you can now get this pack of 3. So not the guy with the axe, but all of the ones with the other. I mean, you can still buy the guy with the axe, but he comes separately. The pack of 3 is this guy with the mason shield, and the previous guy I showed you with the sword, and then this guy with a funky version of a spear. I guess maybe it's more of a polearm. I don't know. Knowing the names of things is not what I do. So I'm going to put those way back because they belong to Ron, and we don't want anything bad to happen to them. Because if I had to paint those again, I would probably go insane. I mean, even more insane than I already am. So what do I want to work on today? So if you remember earlier in the year, I was painting this owlbear in the style of the one from the D&D movie. Hey, Valander. But who do I like even more than the owlbear in the D&D movie? And the answer is Timberchode. Timberchode is awesome. So Hallmark had 2 Timberchode ornaments this year. So this is the big fancy one with the batteries. And I mean, okay, he doesn't roar or anything, sadly, but that lights up. If I didn't have like a ton of light on already, you might be able to detect that. Does it go off? No, we'll just let the passage of time. So this is pretty well done. I mean, it's not amazing, but it certainly looks a lot better than the cheapy Hallmark version. So this guy was like $10, and I think this one's $25. And he's kind of sad. So I was thinking, would it be possible to use some miniature paint and techniques to spruce him up a little so he wouldn't feel so bad hanging out with his big bro there. So that is what I'm going to try to do today. Although, you know, there's plenty that could be done on this one, and I'm debating that, although, you know, it does have the battery and everything. But let's look at another version of Timberchode, who Valander calls Timberchode as a joke. Okay, he's not even going to fit. This is the Funko Pop version. And here's where you can see scale, because even though they really haven't done a lot more than they did on the Hallmark one, we're going to get natural shadows being cast by the lights. So he's going to look a little more involved. But then you look at stuff like the teeth, and that's not really up to how we would paint miniatures most of the time. I mean, we'd give that at least a wash, probably. I'm not going to attempt to paint Funko Timberchode. But I am showing him for a reason. So the color scheme's pretty similar between, I mean, you know, it's not the exact same yellow and the exact same red and stuff. But between those three, it's very similar, I would say. So now let us look at actual movie Timberchode. So this is in a scene from the movie where he's chasing after his snacks. And this is another scene from the movie. Clearly these are screen grabs because they're kind of blurry. Valander the Red. I've seen people reacting to the D&D movie on YouTube, and almost all of them adore Timberchode. Oh, I just love him so much. I mean, the minute I saw the ad, he's our Cat Corbin. You know, he may be a hefty boy, but he can still hunt. And so I also found the concept art had been posted on ArtStation, and I totally wrote down the person's name to tell you, and then left that on my other desk. Luca somebody. Excellent work by me. Here's a little close-up where he's done more of the kind of rendering suggestions of what the scales and horns and stuff would look like. And there's the zoom out version. And this is quite different in some respects to this. Like in a lot of respects. And the movie one seems to be based pretty closely on this. So why do the toys look like this? Valander is saying, what about the art of him from Out of the Abyss, which I suspect is what I'm about to show. Is that the art of him from Out of the Abyss? My guess is that a lot of the toy people and whatnot were given this as the guide. And there's a reason that Dungeons and Dragons would have used this for a cover as well, and for other art. I have well, it's not a mouse pad because it's giant. A desk pad? I don't know what they call them. With this on as well. Because I'm totally obsessed with Timberchode. I'm not going to lie. And this is something that comes up in miniatures. And I've kind of talked about it before in a different way. The challenge of painting. And these hobgoblins are kind of an example. They're supposed to be dark and dreary. And, you know, their clothes and their gear isn't going to be shiny, new, bright colors, and you get people like thieves and assassins and stuff like that. It's a similar thing. And then the challenge is, how do you paint them in a way that is eye-catching, so that you make a miniature that's cool to look at, but you still maintain the essence of the character. And sometimes when we give people feedback about contrast, it will be more color contrast, like all the colors are like roughly the same value gray if you looked at this in black and white, which is certainly true of the concept for timber chode. I mean, the variations we would see would be shadows and highlights on like the folds and the wrinkles and his big roundness and stuff. The actual variation, that red is a little bit lighter and that red's a little bit darker. But the value scale is like this. Where the value scale of this guy is like this because we've made the belly a much lighter cream color, and then on these even, it shifts to yellow in some places and stuff. And the toy people are doing this for the same reason people will tell you need more contrast, or the teachers will say put some saturation in there. It makes it easier to see. Like, these guys are supposed to go on a Christmas tree with a lot of other bright, exciting decorations. If I painted him, natural scale red with the level of contrast that's on the movie guy, they would just blend into the tree. The movie guy has the advantage of A, being the size of a movie screen, and B, he's in motion. So you can show different things with motion and the play of light. We have something that's static and small. We have to use some contrast of saturation. Do they have to be this bright? Like, could we change these scales to cream to be more like the cover art? Absolutely. And maybe I'm going to do that. I don't know. But the idea that, I don't feel like I have to paint this the boring red. I'm not sure I feel like I want to paint this the boring red. Green users. Toys are also usually sculpted before the final image is done in a movie. Very true. Although they might have had that same concept art from that I found on ArtStation. I would assume that the movie people or wizards or whoever would have been able to give them that, because they probably had to make that art before they did the guy in the movie. But yes, any other secrets that green users know about how toys are made? So yeah, they have to guess a little bit sometimes too. But I still think it serves as a good example of the idea that sometimes the spirit of the thing is more important than realism. It's got to feel real. It's got to feel genuine. It doesn't have to match a real thing 100%, because usually a real thing is more boring to look at than we want a miniature thing to be. So the other problem that I had to consider was, can I paint these guys at all? Like, if I don't want to paint them over with a different red, will they take paint? So that is what I was testing this morning. And I think you can tell more from the difference of the sheen, because this plastic's a little shiny. I painted this scale with some yellow. I think it was lantern yellow, but it might have been, yeah, I think it was lantern yellow. I had lantern and marigold yellow that I think I was doing the test with. And so I let it dry just for a little bit, and then I was rubbing it. I was using a Q-tip actually for a little more abrasion, and then also because I would be able to see if the yellow came off at all. And nothing came off. And then when I was looking at this one, the wings and the body do feel painted to me. Like, it has a more matte texture than straight up plastic, where I think these back scales, I think some of them at least, I think where it fades from the brown to the red, I think might be painted, but probably not. It's probably just they started in softly with the red over the brown, and then the base definitely doesn't seem painted to me. So I thought, well, it should be. It would look a lot more interesting if it were painted, but that also gives me a place to test just the straight up plastic. So I did. Well, now I think maybe I did use my lighter yellow. I don't know what I was doing. I did a little test stripe, and then I did the same thing. I let it dry, and I only let it dry about 5 minutes, which is really not enough time. Like, this still isn't fully cured. This won't be fully cured until like this time tomorrow probably. But it's sticking all right. And I painted, see now, I think it was a little bit down here. And then I was even like, well, surely if I do a wash, and I put a lot of water in, that's not going to work. That's going to beat up. And they actually both seem to take a wash. But even though they seem to, I'm still going to probably create transparency with matte medium to help adhesion. And, just double check. I mean, maybe I'd use a little bit of water to help a wash be runnier. I also want to be careful with how much fluid I put on this guy because there is, there's a light, there's batteries. I don't want stuff leaking inside the neck. And these might be open holes too. So I don't want anything leaking. But before I did the paint test, I wanted to clean them. And Hallmark's suggestion for cleaning their ornaments is a Q-tip and water. And I thought, well, that's great for dust, which these guys will have on them because they were sitting on my painting shelf for like 2 months as I thought about doing this. But they might also have oil from me picking them up and admiring how adorable they are. I usually would go with a high percentage isopropyl alcohol on a miniature that's not painted. You can also use isopropyl alcohol to clean out dried paint. So that didn't seem like the way to go. So what I ended up doing was taking about a 10% amount of the isopropyl and rubbing it on them. I used the Q-tip at first and then I was like, well, that's taking forever. So then I used this and I just, dabbed up any residual moisture. So I did do that before I painted them. Also, I would say you probably have to do all these tests on every single thing. Like even, I have other Hallmark ornaments. I have like an Indiana Jones. And well, wouldn't it be cool to have his, paint his face to be a little nicer looking and stuff. But I got that like 8 years ago. Is it the same plastic as this? Probably not. Is it the same paint as this? Probably not. I'm sure they all go to different manufacturers and whatnot every time. So I would do the same tests, even if they work great on this. Then the other problem I noticed with this guy, so this guy I can stick on a holder, no problem, because we're not supposed to care about the bottom. This guy is fully round. He's fully 3D round. So the best idea I came up with was to use reverse tweezers. So those are tweezers that open when you push on them, which I do recommend having in your hobby toolkit. And I may have to reposition them depending on which part of them I'm working on, but it's something. He also doesn't sit flat even. The other thing I would do is just put him down on something on the belly, fix the rest, and then flip him over. Or maybe do that in the opposite direction so that I would not be stressing newly added paint. Because chances are whatever paint they've used is like way tougher than the paint that I have. Because if you've ever tried to get, paint off pre-paint, like Mage Knight and those guys. So I think if we looked at that cover again, these kind of colors are closer to what the belly scales are than like this bright yellow. And I'm debating whether to try and do that. I think I might. I grabbed just like a ton of stuff off my shelf trying to figure out what I would use for this. And I did get some of the holiday colors out. So this is graham cracker, which would probably be a nice shade for colors like that. And I've got some other one over here. I don't think it's relevant right now. Would I start with the belly scales? Yeah. Well, maybe we should do some stuff on the back first. I know, this plan is very well planned. Did I used to write my essays pretty last minute? Why, yes. Yes, I did. Let's see if his big tongue will fit on there. It will, but I think he needs a lot more glue tack than that because he's a big boy. So let me get the book cover, Timber Toad, again. And see what... So yes, we definitely need to deepen this red up some. I also got, if I need to mix colors, I dug out my super washes, which are not currently available. I keep suggesting to Ron that they should be available again. But if you have the clears or, you know, acrylic inks, it'll be a similar thing. Like I'll just be, if I decide these reds are too bright or something, I'll just grab a little green from that and mix it in. So I'm gonna start with a wash. I want to be like too extreme, so I'm gonna try this clotted red. Hey, Grey Monster, Dark a Flack of Flame. I was debating whether I should actually use a bit of gloss with this guy so that I'm closer to the finish that it came with, and I'm still somewhat undecided on that question. Maybe just a little smidge. Somewhere I have actual water. I was tidying my desk, which is always how you lose things. I want to rearrange all my other desks. I have 4 desks in this room. You cannot see it from this angle. So there's the paint desk, the photo desk, an art desk, and then my computer desk, which is an L shape. So technically there are like 5 flat surfaces that are entirely covered with stuff at all times. I think we need to make that a little more transparent. Always good to go conservative in the beginning. What's funny is I can replace this. I told my husband, like, if I mess this up, you're gonna have to buy me another Timber Toad. But this one is actually sold out. So, okay, that makes sense. But I'm sure I could get some somewhere. Or just not care because I have the big boy. And if anyone was eyeing the Funko one, and then if you didn't pre-order it, it like went up to $300 on eBay and stuff, it's gone way back down. So it is no longer insanely priced. And you can get one if you want. I should have grabbed the cranberry. That looks like a good color. So, we'll give it a shot. See what happens. It'll be interesting because I'm going to have like a transition point to deal with because I had to... Okay, I thought I got all the hair off of him, but somehow he's attracted more hair. And the thing about this being plastic that'll work out pretty well is I can fade those edges like that just with a wet brush and not worry about, you know, having ring marks from my wash if I end up getting it someplace that I don't want to, like that was too much in the belly. But there was a nice natural break there with that ridge. Oh, I guess it is paint because there's a chip there. Which I can't imagine how I would have even gotten anything there, so that must have kind of been that way. Now, do I remember what was going on in the wings? Absolutely, I do not. So I'm gonna finish up this part and then go see if I should also be adding this to the wings. There's a bubble. I still think that's pulling a bit too much. Then I can kind of do that fade thing so I don't have to do the top right now. I want to see whether I got paint everywhere in the section I'm working on before that paint gets too dry. It is just a little bit of a transition line there. So already that is probably better than how we look over here. Might I want to go a little darker in some places? I might come back in. Gray Mouser, I preferred the Treasure Dragon. Treasure Dragon. I know which one is the treasure? I'm thinking of the Treasure Golem, and that's not a dragon. It's a golem. All right, I think I'm probably dry enough on this edge to continue. I could use a bigger brush, maybe. I don't think I'm going to though, actually. No, I dug out all these giant brushes. So here's where I'm gonna want to fade out a little more because it's got more transitions in the original paint. And I'm probably going to completely repaint the teeth and the eyes and stuff, so I'm not too fussed about getting some paint in there. Probably want to try to keep it off the horns, though. The Treasure Dragon is the one sculpted by Julie Guthrie. Also doesn't arrow it down, but Gray Mouser has given us the number, which is 20347. And I bet Quindy will pop a link into the chat any minute now. But I thought I would just, you know, show that we can use our Reaper paints on non-Reaper things. Because I'm willing to bet almost all of you have something, if you have Christmas, I mean, that you have something like some Hallmark ornament or another. They do make a lot of kind of geek and fandom ones. So if you've ever wondered if you could spruce it up, I'm attempting to find out. I had to use hobby abilities to fix one of my hand solo ones. It started coming apart, and I had to glue some bits back together. So there, if we look at the back, we can compare. I mean, the wash isn't totally dry, so maybe that's not fair. The wash is more dry here. And look, we're already getting, you know, you can see these bigger because of the way the wash accentuates things. But we're going to make them look bigger still. With some deliberately placed shading. I don't know if the, I'd have to look again because I have the memory of a sieve. If the cover guy has, you know, if these backplate scales, I think they're all dark. And I will have to debate whether I wish to take the effort to like repaint this completely to be the brown like this guy. Or, I mean, I don't know, this does look kind of weak sauce, so I may want to do that. Oh my God, all this chubby little leg. So I don't know if any of you have seen it, but there's like I think the original probably was from a vet's office, like this, is your cat a healthy weight chart? And it'll be like, so it's got like 6 or 7 pictures, and the first one's too skinny, and the second one is, slender but good, and then the next one is, just average, normal, whatever. And the next one is a little chunky, and then the next one is, quite chunky, and then the next one is, severely obese. But somebody took that and they renamed the chunkier ones, chonk, mega chonk, stuff like that. And the last one is Oh Lord, He Comin', which is temperature. And I saw someone do a dragon chart where they redid the chart but with dragons, and that was pretty hilarious. So I will start on this side now, trying to find those break points or places where it's not going to be obvious if I have to come back with wet over dry paint. Because, sometimes you are going to get things that are too large or oddly shaped or whatever that you might not be able to get the wash on all at the same time. And that is how I handle that. Even more important for glazes. And he's got the hair of my chonk on him. Grey Mouser has a Reaper cat dragon. Is that the one that has a little mouseling riding it? Or do you mean one of the holiday ones? Because those are awesome. And highly accurate to the amount of carnage a cat can cause with holiday things. Alright, this Corbin hair is just very persistent. We actually had to cut a little mat out of him last night, and I was like, I brushed you 2 days ago. How do you get this matted up? I do not understand. So he kind of has, it's just one little spot, but he kind of has that home haircut thing happening. I feel bad for him. On the upside, he doesn't have to do his school pictures anytime soon. So it's interesting. I don't know what this stuff is. It looks all shiny. You'd think it would repel water, but it does all right with it watered down. Because where I'm feathering the edges, it is just water. It's not the brush on sealer medium mix. Should the little feet be yellow? Sure, why not? I don't know if we can see the underside of his feet in any of the other versions of him. He's probably going too fast in the movie to see him. The tricky part on if I was to do something like Indiana Jones, is that matching these reds and yellows isn't going to be too hard, but I probably would have to do more testing to get a skin tone match. And I wouldn't have to match, if I was doing like this, I wouldn't have to match everything. I just have to get a shadow color that fits with it. I don't love how it dried in some of those crevices, but, this is going on a Christmas tree. It's not going to get the same level of examination of something I'm going to post online, looked at in isolation. I should look for all the parts that I missed because I'm like really terrible about doing that with washes. The nice thing about him being all wrinkly is that, it's not like he's supposed to have perfect skin. I don't think that's really Timber Chode's deal. Did I get his little face everywhere? I did not. And there, I got it too much. All right, so Grey Mouser has the Christmas cat in a tree. That's the one I actually did paint like Corbin. Although Corbin has never done that, he actually has very little interest in the Christmas tree. Once you finish putting the decorations up, so there's nothing like shaking or jingling or whatever, he's like, whatever. He's such a hunter, he only wants to mess with things that are, alive. Grey Mouser replaced our couch with 2 lazy boys. It was taking 2 hours to get, it took 2 hours to get fur out of the carpet. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we replaced the carpet, and now we just have Corbin tumbleweeds everywhere you look. And yet when I brush him, hardly any hair comes off of him. I'm like, I don't understand how there is so much fur in my house, and I can't preventative maintenance this at all. I'm going to look up the wings of our book cover guy. So for anyone who wasn't here earlier, this is the book cover art of Timber Chode, and the wings are not strikingly different than the body. Interesting. They look a little lighter because they're transparent. I mean, semi-transparent skin that you're seeing through, which is not invoked in any way in the plastic. But then the finger bones, they're like fingers on bats, but if you have 6 limbs, I guess maybe it's a different deal. Are this darker color in that. So I think I should give it a little bit of a wash, but I'm not sure if it should be a slightly lighter red. So this is my clotted red. What else did I have? Maybe it'd be better to do it in the Carnage red. I'm hoping to replace our couch. Grey Mouser has a Maine Coon and a Ragdoll, so no wonder for, oh my gosh, that's... See, I've never actually wanted a long hair cat, and Corbin isn't. He's a medium hair cat, but it is still a striking difference between a medium hair cat and a genuine short hair. And my other cats have all had a very sleek fur, not that like fluffy cloud, cotton candy, whatever you would call the fluffy fur. And Corwin's much more in the fluffy arena. So it was new for us. And I'm not saying I like every cat we've ever gotten. I've like examined it to make sure it has that kind of fur, but it did work out because we had taken another cat off the street, and if she got along with the others, we would have kept her, but she had that even fluffier fur. Like, she wasn't very long hair, but she had that really soft, thin hair that just floats through the air, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be amazing with miniature painting. But alas, she was not very good at getting along with other cats. She got kind of bossy. Once she finished being nervous and she explored the whole house, she kind of like, every few days, she went in a different room once we finally released her. And once she had that confidence, then she started being obnoxious to one of the other cats. And it was like, well, that cat was here first, so I'm afraid we have to find someone else to take care of you. Because she was super sweet. I would have liked to have... now I'm wondering if I should use the darker thing on the back side of the wings. You can see how well I planned and everything. I meant to. I kind of had a week. And I'm not gonna talk about why right now. We'll talk about that later. This is not the time. So yeah, I might make more of that clotted, whatever it was, for the underside of the wings, since that area would be in more shadow. I would like to get a new couch. Well, I'd like to get a new lazy boy too. We have one lazy boy. We actually have a lazy boy couch, so it reclines. And this was originally purchased for downstairs, where there is more space, and that worked. And we used to watch movies down there before we kind of got more into playing games. So when our other couch kind of wore out, it was made of jeans. It was denim. It was awesome. But eventually, denim wears out. And it was a sad day, but we had to part with the denim couch, so we replaced it with the one from downstairs. And the living room is more confined space, so we don't get to use the lounging feature as much. But I don't find it very comfortable for my back. My back is like super specific now in my old age, where I'm like a weird person who wants to sit very upright if possible. And this couch does the opposite of that, so it does me in pretty quickly. And I don't get to sit with my husband on the couch anymore. So we're hoping to go find a new one sometime next year. But that's a whole... Yeah, I was on Instagram. I don't... Like, Facebook ads kind of are all over the map until they figured out I like board games. Like, one time they wanted me to buy a goat. I'm like, what in my Facebook history has ever suggested that I would buy... Actually, no, it wasn't a goat, because I would buy a goat probably if I could. It was a sheep, and I would not buy a sheep because I don't even like wool sweaters. So I was like, where did you get this? I would like to buy a weird heirloom sheep thing from Facebook, because I would not. But anyway, Instagram gets my number better for the ads. And a couple weeks ago, I was scrolling, and there was an ad for, one of these like fancy chairs for your like computer desk. Or it wasn't a gaming chair. It was more for your computer desk. And I was just like, oh, that looks like heaven, because you could adjust so many things. Hey, Red Fury 9 and Raiders. Broken 77 and Red Fury 9. We're very happy to see you. I'm working on, I was testing whether I can use my Reaper paints to spruce up a Hallmark ornament. Because, you know, they're not always quite as cool as how we would paint a miniature. And I thought, well, I have the tools and I have the knowledge. Can I apply this without having to like repaint the whole thing from scratch, you know, prime it and do all that? I didn't want to go to that extent, but can I just like add a little extra shading and stuff like that? And so far the answer seems to be yes. But I did do tests on the plastic. You can't see that I tested on a belly scale for him, and then this one I even was able to test just on the bottom. Joey the Rascal, I need to go get it. Oh my gosh. $6 million Dragon Steve Chunky. This is Timber Chode from the D&D movie, and they did kind of like a cheapo version, which is the guy I'm working on because the paint job was pretty sad. And then this is the fancy, I don't know, magic ornament or whatever the heck they call it version. And oh, that looks better than it. When I first tried lighting it up, because of all the lights I have on, it was like you couldn't really see anything. But the flame does light up. Alas, he doesn't roar, which would be super cool. I don't know why they didn't include that part. But they did not. So, alright, I was making more of this darker wash for the underside of the wings. And it's a little too dark. It might be. Add a little more brush on sealer, which I'm using in lieu of matte medium, because it essentially is matte medium. And I know it goes with my, you know, it's the same medium as in the paints. If I can, I like to use the same medium as the brand of paint. I'm not like fanatical about it, but I can in this case, so I did. See, that is what I didn't want to do. I also want to try to get those bubbles. If I were smart, I would have done the other wing. Well, no, they're both wet. I would have waited until the wings were dry on the top, so that if I had to do that feathering thing, I could do it. But if you're new here, I like to screw up on screen. So I do things wrong on stream all the time, or things I haven't tested, so that we can test together and try to find solutions. Because I think that is a very integral part of miniature painting that we don't always get to see on like nice edited YouTube videos, because who has time to watch hours and hours and hours of somebody painting a miniature to see all the fun bits and the not fun bits. Do you want to catch those bubbles before they dry? And some of this is maybe pulling a little much. We don't want like really dark, weird looking shadows in the light membranes of the wings. Even on a big guy, those are going to be lighter membranes. So we'll just leave that. Red Fury 9, one of my favorite parts of the D&D movie, the Chunky Boy. Yes, me too. Love him. Just love him so much. That's why I have many versions. Oh, I didn't show the other version. I even have this little guy who is not painted. It's different colors of this more rubbery plastic. So I would not attempt to repaint this guy. Plus, also, he's like supposed to be cartoon style. But just the crankiness of him cracks me up. I keep him on my windowsill, so when I'm doing dishes I can have a laugh. Alright, I think I want to put a little more like intentional shadow in some places. So for darker red, let's see, it's clouded red. That's a little too crimson. So we'll try a little bit of this bloodstained red. But I think I'm going to mix it with the clouded red. I didn't mean to get that much. It was one of those oozing things. But since he is a lot bigger than what I usually paint, I'm trying to remind myself that I do need to mix up more paint than I would usually. Because that would be a very easy thing for me to forget. And it matters less for this, but for the wash, you don't want to have to stop in the middle and mix more wash. I don't want this super opaque. Let's test the opacity, as I like to do. And it's actually, that is pretty darn opaque. So I'm going to get just a bunch more that medium. Which in this case is brush on sealer. And I was using just a little smidge of gloss on this guy because the paint was kind of, the factory paint was kind of glossy. So since I'm not like repainting everything, it is my hope that this will help it blend in a little better. I always like to start conservatively. Like if I've made it too transparent, I can fix that in a number of ways. If I make it too opaque, I'm likely to mess things up and not be able to fix it. I may want to get a more precise brush now, but we'll see. So now I'm kind of trying to think about the stuff we would normally do with a miniature. Like, this part is sloping down and under. If you think of him as a big tube, which he most definitely is, where it starts sloping down and under is where the shadow is going to go. Assuming a light source from above and like he's not lit by his own fire, because they didn't give the less expensive guy the fire. Joey the Rascal asks, am I painting over the existing paint or did I strip him? And I am painting over the existing paint. So I've done a wash over the red that they had, which I don't. So this is, I haven't done any paint on this part and the insides of the legs. So that is their boo-boo. And there's some more boo-boos, but if in this guy, and I also have the Funko one, but it barely fits under screen. Those scales are all brown. Let me know if you can still see and hear me, because I'm hearing my UPS click on and off, which suggests that we're having some power issues, and I want to make sure that this is not affecting the stream. So yeah, my goal with this guy was wondering, Quinny says we're still alive, thank you, if I could just enhance on an ornament instead of having to go to that lengths of, trying to strip it, or I probably wouldn't even try and strip it. I probably would just try to prime over it. Because getting off this paint, from what I can tell from other people, I've never actually really done that with the pre-painted guys, but from what I've seen, it is not the work of a moment. And if I could just prime over it and it would take the paint primer, I would totally do that. And that is what I tested with this guy is, before I did this, I washed it with a Q-tip, and it was mostly water. It was about 10% isopropyl alcohol in case there were like finger grease or something on them. And then I tested on one of the belly scales that's currently on, on top of the blue tack. I tried to pick an unobtrusive location to test whether it would take the paint. And then I watered some paint down, like for a wash, and ran that over it. And that I just wiped off. I didn't leave it on. But to my surprise, it didn't even beat up that much. So I've used medium in the washes that I've done, and even here for the shadow color, because it's going to make a stronger paint film. So, a lot of my decorations that don't have a box, I just put, wrap them up in paper towel or something and shove them in the Christmas bins. So I do want the paint job to, try to make it as sturdy as I can. And using medium instead of water is like using clear paint. So I'm keeping it painty. And I should get a nice paint film as a result. And after I put the paint on, I tried rubbing it with a Q-tip as well as my finger to kind of test the strength. And even though I was doing that pretty soon after I applied the paint, and it takes acrylic paint, it's touch dry really quickly, but it doesn't really cure for 24 hours or so. So I was like stressing new paint, and it did all right with that. So I didn't go to town on it, but I did test that it was, not going to be repelled by the plastic kind of thing. And it was not. And I did a similar thing on this guy. I'm not even, there's a little bit of this yellow that is me applying paint, and then I did the wash over this part, and I wiped it off with my damp sponge before it's set. But this took the wash too, because this is a different kind of paint. It's more matte. And then I even tested, once I realized this was bare plastic, I tested it on the bottom of that, and I did the same thing with the Q-tip and my finger, and it stuck. So if I am super brave and want to do the fancy version, do some of this to the fancier version, I can do that. But I would have to be careful with the moisture, because there is a battery compartment in there and bits that are glued on. So I would need to be careful with the moisture for like a different reason. Make sure it doesn't get in the nooks and crannies too much. The belly scales are a different color, so I'm just not worrying about them now. And that is a section that I'm debating whether to repaint, because they're very kind of neon. Hey hoo, 66H. They're very kind of neon here, and they're creamier on the original concept art. And I'm not sure if I feel like that would be better. Or if, because you can hardly see that part, I just want to live with it. So the tail, also a tube, so the light's it's gonna be shadowed as it rolls away from the light, and then that upper part is going to be lighter in value, where we have the lights and highlights. And did I get enough of his tum-tum over here? I don't know that I did. I think I do want to go back and do one more shadow layer with a little more pigment in my paint. So I will mix in some more of that was the Bloodstained Red, which is a nice, kind of less saturated shadow color for reds. but still not too brown or something. Like it's still more in the red. Like you can mix shadows for red with black, but I think almost any other color is better. Like dark blue, green, you'll get an interesting shadow color if you mix green into red, because those are color complements. Blue, it'll start going a little bit more violet, and that purple almost always works for shadows. But black can be a little too harsh or uninteresting. Guess I didn't put any of that on the underside of the wings, but in the lass, I have had some. I wasn't paying enough attention to the way my wash is drying. We'll see if I can fix that later. I definitely made some mistakes that I can try to fix on stream, I guess. So although I have the cylinder thing happening, there's also areas where the scales are lighter, so I want to preserve that a little more. So I'm not going down all the way to the tongue. That's probably good for shadows. So are they equal? Oh, there. I feel like that side got a better of a transition than this side. Alright, so I was not going to go to the wings straight away, but do I want to see what I can do about that? Maybe I do. Okay, I got a lot of water drops on my wet palette, so I'm just going to wipe those up so that they don't. The only water in there is water I know about. We will test this color, which I suspect is too red. It's not too far. We'll mix in a little bit of the wash colors to try to unify things, and that is a factor actually, because that's going to be more the wash color, isn't it? Or at least partly. Red is a forgiving choice to do this with because red paints tend to be a little less opaque. So for a practice one, this was probably a good way to start instead of, my Indiana Jones. Where skin paints are much more opaque as a rule. But this, I could have prevented this if I'd been watching the wash a little more closely instead of jumping to the next area. I could have pulled some of the paint that was pooling up with a damp brush. And had a few problems with that. I don't need to eliminate it. I just need to make it unobvious enough to live with. And then this is the downside of red being more transparent. It makes layering and doing stuff like fixing these little boo-boos easier, but you almost always have to do multiple coats. I mean, I'm probably going to repaint that part anyway. So, I think I can live with that. Zachariah M. Why prevent happy little accidents when you may benefit from them? And it is true. Sometimes you can discover cool things. Or you can discover when it's good to be patient and check your washing. Alright. Probably do want to put a little shadow in the wings, but I was doing... I want the lighter color for that. Well, alright, the middle color, the cloudy red, which is that one. And now the shape is kind of, you know, it's folded over, and then here the wings kind of roll, you know, this part rolls down. I don't need to go nuts with shadow here, since the whole thing is more upward facing than, you know, the bottom of the tail. But adding a little bit is worth taking a minute. Kind of highlight the, you know, structure of the arm bone, well, wing bone, I guess. The analog to the arm bone. See, even just that little bit adds a little more depth. This wing isn't quite as folded over though, so I don't want to go. I'll make it exactly the same here, just catch a few places. Like right there where I think no wash ever got. I'll put some darker color there. And then I'm going to move dangerously and even accent this a little more, because I like that effect. Get some here. But like not here. A damp brush is your friend. And I could put more shadow there, but he's probably big enough that natural lighting is gonna, you know, take care of the underside of the wings for the most part. So I'm not gonna go too nuts there. But now, I guess you need some highlights. So I'll try this brighter color that I had, and it probably has to be brighter still. And here I have my Lotus Orange. I like a lot. I like red dust is still around. Salmony colors, in my experience, work well to highlight red. You're kind of splitting the difference between adding pink or white. I mean, adding white or orange, I should say. Salmon kind of splits the difference and lets you add a little bit of both, so you're not making it too orange, you're not making it too pink. I mean, this may be too big of a jump, but I guess we'll find out. Oh. Anything, I might need to undo putting water in there. But like I said, I always like to go conservative rather than mess something up. So I'm not dry brushing, but I'm using the side of my brush so it will hopefully catch more of the upward parts of the texture and not go too much into the wash depressions, although I see that this is not working 100%. But it is working. Maybe I need a different brush. Looking for the places that would be closer to the light, or facing the light more. I guess a more accurate way to say that. And I think that I may not get to it today, but I think I would like to paint the back spine scales all of the darker color, so I'm not even going to bother with the plates in there, adding these highlight colors. I mean, I probably should in case I get lazy and don't repaint that, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like just having those little tips is kind of lame looking. Hey Barnes Emma 330. Thank you for joining us today. I'm using my Reaper paints to spruce up a Hallmark ornament. Because Timber Toad needs to be cooler than a factory repaint made him. Because he's just my best boy. I'm just trying to see if there were little cracks in their paint. I think it might be scratches, actually. Or, more wrinkly textures. Since Timber Toad certainly has some wrinkly textures. And if I find I'd added gloss in the washes to go with the original paint, and because I wanted to use this full strength, it doesn't have any gloss, and you can start to see the finish difference. I can come back at the end and just do, make whatever mix I want of the gloss and the matte sealer and unify everything to the same finish if I so wish, or I can decide to use like gloss on the inside of his mouth to make that shinier, or stuff like that. So I'm not going to sweat too much the way it looks a little different in the highlight area. I'm going to worry more about matching the color, the hue of the color, than the finish of the colors. I don't know if that finish thing, I'm trying to see if it's, yeah, if you look at the side of the tail, it's more, it's obvious on screen too. Now, don't get me wrong, for everyday use, and almost always, I prefer a Reaper level of matte. You know, it's not super, super matte, but it's a nice matteness that, you know, degree of matte that I can very accurately, or more accurately, judge the level, you know, the value of my highlights, and make sure that I'm actually adding highlights and it's not reflections making something look lighter. So I very much prefer, especially with, you know, general miniature painting, to not have gloss in my paints. I know there are painters that make use of it, and they'll use, like, you know, a semi-gloss paint like there to paint something leather, so that you're kind of, the texture of the paint is mimicking the texture of the material, and you get a nice effect with that. I just, for me, I find working with paints that have much shine to be challenging for me to judge my paintwork. So as a rule, I'd rather just paint more opaquely and then come back in and choose what I want with sealer or varnish kind of thing, if I want something different. Like the glossy mouth, because in a lot of concept art, he's salivating, so it would make sense to reflect that with a little smidge of gloss. But that would be after I finish the teeth. The spines are actually supposed to be the same dark color as the back ridges, so I haven't been doing much of the spines. Although this again creates more work for me, so I kind of have to decide whether I just want to enhance the factory paint job, or if I want to start revising the factory paint job. And that is a good question. How much do I love Timbertone? I mean, I do like him a lot, but do I like him do more work a lot enough? That's a tough question. I mean, we gotta make sure his butt looks good, right? Everyone likes to watch Temperature leaving the room. All right, let's say I wanted to go even slightly lighter than that. What I would wish that I had my other color, I bet is what I would do. And now I've lost the lotus. There we go. There's the lotus. So, I said if you add a bit of orange and a bit of white, you should get a good salmon. I guess we'll find out if I am correct. See, that's getting a little orangey. What would I'm gonna go with, so I've got Golden Glow and non-metallic gold highlight, and both of those are yellow that have a little bit of white in them. So I'm gonna try that instead of going, straight white. I shook my paints before the stream started, so shake your paints more than you see me doing. I have one of those vortex mixers, so I try to do it before the stream starts so that you don't have to listen to the vortex mixer. Yep, see, and now it's not quite as orange. This is probably more opaque than this one was. So this was the Straight Lotus, which is definitely not opaque. And this is the one I mixed, which looks like also not opaque, so I should be in good shape. But I'm still gonna be ready to wipe it off if I have, because sometimes something looks like it works on my paper and then it doesn't 100% work on the miniature. So the paper test is pretty good, but it's not infallible. Under the wing isn't going to be getting as much light, and people aren't going to be seeing it as well when it's on the tree, so I'm not going to sweat back there too much, or under there too much, but I am going to work on his booty. Because the tail is more present, or visible. Wings are definitely visible, so I'm gonna add some more up there. I don't mind if it's a little streaky because natural things are not always super uniform. Like where is he? The donkey I was working on last week, that was part of my goal, was to add more variation into the fur so that it looked more like a natural animal instead of like a donkey suit, I guess. So Timberchode is also a natural animal in the world that he comes from. So having a little bit of variation, as long as it looks like variation in the creature and not brush marks that I have screwed up. That's kind of the tightrope that you gotta walk. It's a similar thing with, like, I guess, weathering and other things that are going to add variation to the surfaces, and those things often look good because they're adding variation to the surfaces. You just want to make sure it doesn't look painted. So it's not necessarily bad if it looks messy. It looks natural messy. Like right here, I don't know if some of that is the matteness or then that's actually a little scratch in the original factory paint that I would probably have to apply some other stuff to deal with that. So I just elected not to worry about it. For now, at least. So I think he's looking better. I think we can see his. I should have taken a picture or something, I guess, before I started doing this. I'll have to go look at their online pictures, which I'm sure make the paint job look more magnificent than the one that you will open up and get in your package, because I think they usually take the test paints that so when they're making this, they would have the figure and then they'd have an artist that's like, okay, they put the paint on to show the factory what they would want it to look like, and then the factory would tell them whether or not that is possible. So that's like the sample paint or the test paint, or I'm not sure what they officially call it. But I suspect that sometimes when you're seeing pictures of pre-painted miniatures that look very different on the company website, that is what's happening, that they're taking the photos of that, not the actual factory produced ones. And I mean, it's impressive to me that factories can do stuff like this in an amount of time where I can pay $10 for this guy. Like, I'm not dissing pre-painted miniatures. They're very clever in how they use like masks and other things to paint them quickly. And then the teeth look terrible, probably because you can't use masks and other thing, and some poor person had to go and then every little, and they're trying to do that and make, like, I don't know, hundreds of these an hour. So here I am taking 400 years. How long has it been? An hour and a half just to paint this far. So I am not dissing the people in the factory who can paint really fast. All right, what do I want to do to him now? What a good question. I guess it's time to commit on the whole, do I want to make this darker or not? Let me go back to my concept art, because I think some people may not have seen that. So this is the concept art, I think, from a module. So you can see that the finger bones on the wings are that darker color, but we can't actually, his spinities maybe don't look like they're darker. But if we go to here's another cartoon version of them. This was, they put this out as a Valentine. And then there's another cartoon version of him so at the beginning of the show, if you weren't there, I was talking about how all of these versions, the Funko, these little cartoon concept or cartoon art, and then the art off the cover all have much more color contrast between the belly and other parts of the guy. And in the movie, he's pretty dark. It's a little more here, but this is not from here to here. It's more like from here to here. And that the horns aren't as dark. It does look like he's got the back ridges, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to tell. Let's see what he looks like in the next picture. Yeah, it doesn't look like the back ridges are differentiated. This is the from the concept artist whose name I meant to write down. This is on ArtStation. So if you search like Tamberto concept art on Google, you should find this. It's Luca something. Was the senior concept artist. So yeah, it's pretty. It's kind of got like a bit of a lava vibe almost, the way he's done it. So that the red is like underneath and the dark is on top. That is interesting. But it's a similar thing. It does not have anywhere near the belly scales aren't even cream here. Never mind yellow. And then the wings are like a totally different color, interestingly. And they bumped it up on these toys for the same reason we tell people to bump it up on miniatures, because the contrast Makes it easier to see something that's smaller, something that's static, and it just makes it more fun to look at. So now I will probably take these belly scales down from like caution yellow, but oh, that's interesting. So I could kind of add brown and try to leave the red cracks showing. All right, sure, why not? What did I pick for browns? What an excellent question. Let's see. And I might even want to, start there and then make the ends even darker. I have this one, which I feel like the slight bit of red, I think I want that. And then for even darker, I have black and brown. So, because this looks like it matches the fancier ornament pretty well. But then I would have to do like at least 3 steps. So I just want to jump ahead to this and see. Mighty Misfit, that is lovely fat dragon. I love it. So these are actually Hallmark ornaments. I think this is probably the first time I've ever not painted a Reaper miniature on stream. Because I figure lots of us have these since they do a lot of fandom stuff, and I can't be the only person who's been looking at ornaments on their tree going, oh, that paint job, if only there were a little bit of shading here and a little bit of this there, this would look so much better. So I had these 2 timber toads, and the cheaper one, the paint job definitely wasn't like glorious. So I thought, why not see if I can use my cool paints to make him look better. And so far I can. Yes. So on Hallmark's site, this guy is sold out. I didn't check Amazon or whatever. But they still have this one. So this is the fancier one, and he's got like the light up flame. And it looks like this would take the paint too, but I'll have to decide whether I'm that brave. Zachariah, I have decided to print out resin ornaments and paint them. I'm a glutton for punishment. I have this whole collection of Christmas ornament and decoration type miniatures that I have been meaning to paint for. The collection grows. The amount I actually paint does not grow, apparently. Because in the end, usually the only holiday miniatures I paint are for Ron. And I don't get to keep those, so I have no decorations that I've painted myself. Except now I do, I guess. But I'm like the only person who's not into 3D printing, so my collection does not include 3D prints. It is all things that I have acquired from people selling them commercially. I'm not saying I have no 3D prints. I do have some friends who have 3D printers who've given me things, but just not Christmas things. But yeah, that sounds like a whole thing where you gotta have a lot less dust in your house and whatnot than what I have. So I'm trying to leave some of the red showing in the cracks. I don't know if it's working on these smaller scales. Maybe we'll see it more when I get to the bigger scales. Because that is what the awesome concept artist had, and I thought that looks cool. I'm sure I could bring it back, but because it's red, it would take some effort. Like I'd probably have to go in there with something with white in between each of the cracks. So I'd have to use like pink or something, and then come back over it with red for it to really show up. Yes, as much as this is a pain, I think that it will look cool. Mighty Misfit says, I'm
far too scared to paint anything I make. You mean like a 3D 3D printed things? Because can't you just print it again? So this is what I always say is if you can get something again, like a Reaper miniature, um, other companies that keep stuff, or Dark Sword's pretty good about keeping all their catalog available. Like, just use the good stuff. Don't be afraid. Don't paint crappy things waiting for the magic day when you're good. Because you won't see that you're getting better if you're canvas, essentially. You're like, if you want to practice oil painting, don't practice on a paper bag. If you want to practice miniature painting, don't practice on old lumpy pieces of lead that your husband threw around in a box for 20 years. Because I was getting better at painting, but I was saving all my good miniatures when I first started painting. And then as soon as I picked up something, modern miniatures are larger scale. They've got more details. They're made of a material that does not wear down as easily as the lead did. So it became easier to see what I was doing and to see that I was improving. And then once I got to a certain point, I had the skills to go back and work on miniatures that were more imperfect and make them look better and stuff. Make up for some of the dings and slings of time and the scale being tinier and whatnot. But also, like, just why not paint stuff you love? Like, if it's not an irreplaceable treasure, why not paint something you love instead of being like, oh, that's too good. That's too good for me. I can't paint it. It's like, okay, if you can get another one, why can't you paint that one? Also, it's acrylic paint. If I decide that these back scales should be red again, I can just come back with my red paint and paint them over. Most miniatures you can paint several times before you're going to be gunking up the detail. And I don't just mean something the scale of this. I mean like a person miniature. So you can see the red a little bit through this brown, and I think I actually like that effect. And then when I come in with the darker color and go on just the tips, that's going to be giving us some of the variation without me having to do very much. So I am down with that. Mighty Misfit. Yes, I could, but I'm currently learning how first, like what paints are good and what you might need to even do it, such as do you have to prime, etc. So you can test stuff like that. I would probably prime resin prints. In fact, I wouldn't say I would just probably do it. I actually do it. These are 3D prints from Reaper. And if you buy these, I think they're 3D prints. The original guy was. I don't know. I'm pretty sure they are. So these are new hobgoblins that have been released. And these were 3D prints, and I primed them. I don't prime the bones plastic. I did a bunch of testing when it first came out and was satisfied that the paint adheres pretty well. Like, just as well, if not better. If you go in with, undiluted paint like this, though. But resin prints, I think they're a lot like real resin. So resin you prime, metal you prime. It's plastic that sometimes you don't have to prime, and sometimes you shouldn't do certain kinds of priming. So you shouldn't do spray priming with a lot of plastics. So it'll get goopy and weird. But as important as priming is washing things. So I washed these guys before I did the paint tests. Um, Usually I just dunk things in isopropyl alcohol. You can scrub it with a toothbrush and dish soap. But since this already had paint on it and I didn't want to damage the paint, the toothbrush and soap thing might have worked actually. I don't think I even thought about that because I'm so used to doing the isopropyl alcohol. But what I did for these was I just diluted my isopropyl alcohol a lot more than I usually would, and with water, and did a little test before I went nuts on them. And then when it didn't pull up paint, I washed them with a brush, essentially. Because you have, if you've had things sitting out, they've got dust on them. If you've been handling them, they've got finger grease on them. Things you buy in packages can still have finger grease on them because it's not like they're handled in a hermetically sealed environment or something. It's people putting things in packages, and people might have just had lunch. But yeah, don't be afraid. Use the good stuff. I mean, you'll make mistakes. I still make mistakes. Usually I learn from those mistakes. And that is how you learn. A lot of people who get in this hobby, maybe you're an engineer or chemist or computer scientist, something like that. Even those of us who are in more of the liberal arts, we tend to think of knowledge more than physical skill being involved. So, like, you have to study to get good at something. You have to do a lot of reading and watching videos and studying. And this is a physical skill. This is like cooking. It's like, yeah, watching a cooking show, using a recipe, that might be helpful. But at some point, you're still going to have to get in there and figure out how to roll the pie crust or fillet the fish or whatever thing. Like, you can't study your way out of ever making a mistake at a physical skill. So, I mean, research is great. I totally like researching things, seeing what other people are doing. I absolutely looked up on the web whether you could repaint Hallmark ornaments. And that was one of those rare times that Google failed me. I mean, I probably just didn't come up with the right search term if I'd stuck at it. But the problem is, I think that they use the term repaints for if they put this ornament out again in 2 years and they use a different color scheme, that's a repaint. So it's not people repainting them, it's Hallmark doing different paint color schemes. So that term sure didn't work. And everything else seemed to kind of come up with that idea. It was like, no, I want to know if I can put paint on them over the paint that's already there. Has anyone done that? And I'm sure that I am not the first person to do this. There's absolutely no way that I'm the first person to do this. But whatever the search terms are to find the other people, I did not figure it out. And my Google foo is pretty good as a rule. So, like, studying and research will tell you stuff like this, like use the handle so you're not touching the miniature very much. But it's not going to let you skip the part where you have to learn how to aim the brush and you have to learn, what consistency paint do you like to do a certain skill with. So it can give you guidelines and advice, and absolutely there are a lot of great videos and written tutorials and stuff out there, but there's just no way to replace the butt in the seat component. of this. It'd be like trying to say you could just study basketball, and then as soon as you get out on the court, you should be awesome at basketball. It's like, well, as little as I know about sports, I know it doesn't work like that. FDM is the other kind of stuff that people use in the 3D printers. You could test. Brush on primer like almost never hurts. Like if brush on primer is going to cause a problem, then acrylic paint is going to cause a problem. Spray primer is where you can run into some problems because of the chemicals in the propellant and the spray and stuff. So I would like get a failed print or something you don't care about and spray that, and then give it a few days and touch it and see if it got sticky or weird or anything before I did it on one that you spent hours working on that you like. And they didn't reach down on this side of the horns because, again, this poor person had 5 seconds, so not judging, but I do want my horns completely painted. And then I guess I get to decide where I think the brown goes on his head. Let me just get the other side of this ridge. It's a little bit on his forehead, but then we'll let this nose spike kind of stand alone. Alright. So I want that little bit of red peeking through, even though it's freaking out a little. Now let's get the darker color. This brush is, I think that is the brush that it's had its day. So since I definitely don't want to paint the whole thing, I'm going to get my other brush and go to the black and brown now. Yes, I'm from what I can tell from my friends who have 3D printers, there are always failures, and the failures are the ones that you can do whatever kind of testing you want on. You can try different methods of cleaning them, try painting directly on them, give it a day, and then try rubbing it and see if the paint stays or not. This might be more opaque, but yeah, I'm going to add just a little bit of water. It's just a little, I haven't done my paint maintenance. Some of my paints are getting a little thick. Yes, painting a surface that hasn't already painted is not the same. It's what I do most of the time. So if you wait until after the stream and go look at the previous videos, there's also Ann Forster streams every day in the morning, and she paints just regular miniatures, where you're going from, you know, a gray or white or black or whatever surface to adding the color, whereas this one is unusual in that I started with some color and then I'm just enhancing it. Now, I guess if you had a print that was, I don't know, ooze or something, and you were just, you know, it is supposed to be one color and you have the filament that's that color, you could print it out and then do stuff like I'm doing with the washes and just a little bit extra color to enhance it. That would probably be more similar. This brown did not look as dark once I started putting it on the miniatures. I'm going to mix the black in. But yeah, don't be afraid of it. It's like cooking. If you ruin that omelet, you can just make another omelet. I mean, yeah, okay, you don't have those eggs maybe, but a lot of times with miniatures, you can take the paint off and just go again. So it's really, don't get in your head about it. That is not going to help you. You want to just do it and find the fun. And get some successes under your belt before you start getting to, oh, what do I do to make it perfect? In this case, I want to, this is more opaque because black's pretty opaque too. So I just want it a little more transparent so it's not going to be super obvious where the edge between the starting brown and the darker brown is. And maybe I just come back later with thin down and put it around the edge. I mean, that might be more efficient. I don't know. I do try to take my own advice and not get too in my head about it, but I don't always succeed. And for me, like, it's also what is your goal? So for me, part of the fun, and I mean this legitimately, this is not fun in air quotes or anything, is trying to make something look really, really good and spending time at it and taking time to do tests and do stuff. I mean, not like necessarily this guy, but in general, I'm painting to what we tend to call display quality. I'm not trying to get 20 guys on the table for this week's game. That is a completely different goal, a completely different approach to painting. And so you don't want to be spending this kind of time. You just want to get in there and do something, and if it doesn't work, you take that lesson and you apply it to next week's guys. And then you'll learn something from next week's guys that will make it easier and faster to paint the week after that. There's more than one way of painting. And I mean, I paint quicker sometimes. Like on stream, I try not to paint the way I really paint on stream because I figure you guys do not want to fall asleep, is what I figure. But not last week, but the week before, or I guess it was the week before that because I missed a week. I painted the way I really paint. So if you actually want to see that, or if you need a cure for insomnia, go back a couple of shows. And once things roll off Twitch, I think they only keep stuff a month or so. Reaper archives all their shows on their YouTube page, so you can go back and watch. Anne tends to paint one miniature from start to finish, so it's not one day after another. She's rotating through 5 or 6 of them at a time. But if you like to see more of okay, here's how you would start, middle, and finish, I don't tend to do that as often. I have done, but I don't tend to do it as often. I tend to be like, okay, let's test dry brushes. Let's look at how we mix colors, or just, I don't know, kind of more random, I guess. I do want to finish some guys. We might have like finish it February or something where I take some of the ones from previous streams that I don't quite finish. And finish them, but we'll see. Like that owlbear, I want to finish the owlbear. Then sometimes I'll take a miniature that I've painted and critique it, and then try to paint in the corrections to show people what that looks like. Because that's something a lot of people are scared to do with their miniatures. Like once you painted something and it came out okay, then it's much riskier to just be like, oh, I'll just do whatever. So I get why people don't do that. So I like to do it now and then so that you can see a very apples to apples before and after. Because a lot of times, you know, someone might say, well, like this version of the miniature looks good, it has more contrast. But that person used like a totally different color scheme, so it's hard for you to extrapolate that to your miniature. So I like to do befores and afters sometime. Because I don't always paint great on stream. Almost always, when I finish the stream and I put the guy on my shelf and then I look at him over the next few days, I'm like, oh dang, there's not enough contrast. I did this wrong. I forgot to do that. Because I'm using some of the parts of my brain that I would use to paint, I'm using to talk to you and read the chat and attempt not to be super boring. So, in a way, it's good because I screw up more on stream and then I have more things to fix on another stream. Or at least to talk about. But it was helpful for me to go. For a while, I was like, why does everything I paint on stream suck? What is wrong with me? Have I forgotten how to do this? And I was like, no, it just... Sometimes choosing the colors and deciding the, you know, is there enough contrast in that? That takes the same part of my brain that makes the words. So it doesn't always happen. Oops, now that's a boo-boo. That's a boo-boo I'm not making better. Where are we time-wise? Yeah, we are getting close. So I don't know if I'll make it to the tail. But I think I will turn them around and do the horns so you can see what this looks like on the face. Got this little ridge thing too. Not to touch the freshest paint with my finger. I think in the movie his eyes are like super bright orange. So I will want to put that in at some point. Well, while we're here, where's my dark red? Super dark red. How have I lost it? There we go. I'll use this blood stain. I think I had a darker one again, but I'll use this. Let's just get the inside of his mouth darker. That'll look cooler. Make his gnashing teeth more apparent. Some horns. I don't know if you can hear a sad cat in the background. That is Corbin being upset that my husband closed his office door because how dare he? How dare he have a closed door in this house? Yes, let's get the part that they forgot. realize that was horn at first. And that will make that eye pop. Once I get to the point of the orange eye, which I probably should have done at the beginning, like how I like to paint eyes. But here we are. Hey, Sierra Echo. Mighty Misfit, is it faster or slower? I think you're probably asking about painting over, enhancing something that exists, like an existing color with paint. Like I said, you could print out an ooze, whatever color you wanted, and then do stuff like I'm doing here. It's probably faster because, if I had been painting this guy, I would have had to spend some time laying down the red color. If I had an airbrush, I mean, I do have an airbrush, but what is my normal paint speed? My normal paint speed is glacially slow. Let's see. An average human, like, I did not count the time on how long it took to paint these guys because it would make me cry. Because I was even slower than normal. Because this is not paint with little metal flakes. It's not metallic metal, which just can take a really long time if you want it to look smooth the way I do. And I was adding a lot of texturing on the leather and stuff like that. And I was painfully extra slow. So, I mean, I want to say there's 10 hours in this guy, but it might be closer to 15. Which is more than it should be. So that is one of a pack of 3. These are hobgoblins, and they've just come out. So there's this guy with a shield and mace. And this guy has a sword. And he does have a shield. He's just not using it right now. And then this one has a bladed spear. I do not know what this weapon would be called. But he also has a great facial expression. Very fun. And Ron's very traditional, so these are in old school D&D colors. So those guys come together as a pack. And then this one was originally a mini of the month, but I'm pretty sure you can just buy him separately and do it. His name starts with a K. Quindy's linked to the Scarneck Goblins, which is the pack. Hopefully she can find this guy who is also Scar. If you search Scarneck, this guy should come up too. Thanks, Gary. Being able to do it faster would probably be more inspiring, but oh well, it's done now. But then I had to paint some bright colors because it was a long time with brown and black and other brown and gray and other gray. So I was like, it's time for some color. Broke out my Tempertone. And those are, I think they're all 3D prints. Mine are all 3D prints. Kadarg is the original guy, and he was 3D print. Reaper's been doing, they do a monthly giveaway, and this year it's been all 3D prints. So there's a different figure for this month. So if you go make an order on the Reaper store, and I think it's $40 or equivalent currency, you will get this month's 3D printed miniature, who I've seen, and now I'm like just totally blanking on right now. Red Fury. I feel that. Having to paint with dull earthy tones gets so boring, and then I end up painting a pink glitch. Yes. Yeah. It's like that. Like, I was like, okay, I need to paint some stuff like purple and teal and green, and I need to go all crazy pastel. But then I remembered that I had Mr. Chunky Boy, and I wanted to, that doesn't, see, that makes such a difference having the extra color. So I'm sure it would look nicer on the even bigger, better Timbertoad ornament. But then for those who weren't here earlier, we're going to look at the really big guy who is not a Christmas ornament. This is a Funko Pop. And I can't even fit him under my camera. But he's super fun. That's actually heavy, though. That is actually a fairly heavy miniature. And I didn't get to, I said I was going to finish Pie Guy at Christmas, but I didn't realize that Christmas is Monday and New Year's is Monday. So this is the last time that I'm going to see you all before it's 2024. So I will have to find some other pie holidays to finish this guy up, I guess. I mean, pie should just be all the time, I guess, really. But certain times are even more pie. But yes, a portly red dragon is worth getting out of bed for, because he likes to get out of bed to chase tasty guys all around the dungeon, and he's surprisingly good at it. So I guess I'm saying goodbye for today, and Merry Christmas, and Happy Yule, and Happy Hanukkah, and Happy New Year, and whatever else you're doing to celebrate the end of the year. March 14th is Pie Day. That's true. I'll have to find the closest day to March 14th that I have a show and finish him up then. He'll have to sit on my shelf a long time then. But thank you for coming. It seems like we had some new people today. We had some great chat. I appreciate that. I'll switch over to my other camera, actually. So Quindy is going to find us a raid so that we can still enjoy more hobby fun. And I won't see you for a while, but I look forward to seeing you in January, whatever, 7th, I guess. Whatever the next Monday is that's not a holiday. I look forward to seeing you then. And thanks for watching all this year. I appreciate it. So I'm going to just vamp a little. Okay, we're going to go raid Samson Arts. So please say hi, spread the Reaper love, tell them how awesome Reaper is. Green Users is wishing everyone a happy holidays. And I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. Bye, everybody.